All right, let's talk about trigonometry. We're going to crack a little code today, a secret that makes one of the trickiest parts of trig, well, a whole lot easier. It's time you met your new best friend, the cast rule.
So, have you ever been here before? You're staring at a problem like this, wondering why the sine of 150 degrees is positive, but the cosine of 210 is suddenly negative. It can feel totally random, right? But I promise you, it's not. There's a really simple system hiding in plain sight.
And that feeling, that confusion, that's the heart of the sine problem. It feels like you have to memorize this giant chart of rules for every possible angle. But what if I told you we could throw out all that memorization for just one single tool?
Okay, so before we find the treasure, we gotta build the map. And in trig, our map is the good old Cartesian plane. We just split it up into 4 sections, and we call those quadrants.
Here's how it works. Quadrant I is in the top right, covering everything from 0 up to 90 degrees. Then we just move counterclockwise. Quadrant 2 is 90 to 180, Quadrant 3 is 180 to 270, and Quadrant 4 finishes the circle from 270 to 360. Simple enough, right? Every angle you can think of is going to land in one of these 4 zones.
Now that we have our map, it is time to reveal the treasure. The key to this whole thing, the simple solution to that annoying sine problem, is a little mnemonic device called the cast rule.
So, what is it? I mean, really? Well, the cast rule is just a super easy way to remember which of our main trig functions, sine, cosine, and tangent, are going to be positive in each of those 4 quadrants we just talked about. That's it. It takes all the guesswork out of the equation.
The name itself is the whole secret. C stands for cosine, A stands for all, S is for sine, and T is for tangent. Each letter tells you exactly which function is positive in its specific quadrant.
And here is how it all fits together on our map. In quadrant 1, the A tells us that all 3 functions are positive. Makes sense, right? Now, in quadrant 2, the S tells us that only sine is positive. In quadrant 3, it's T, so only tangent is positive. And finally, in quadrant 4, we have C, meaning only cosine is positive there. It's a perfect system. Okay, enough theory. The best way to really get this is to see it work. So let's put this tool into practice and solve a few problems.
The process is incredibly simple. All you have to do is 1. Figure out which quadrant your angle falls into, and 2. Look at the cast letter for that quadrant. That letter tells you which function is positive, which means everything else has to be negative. Done. You found the sine.
So let's go all the way back to that first question that kicked this whole thing off. What's the deal with the sine of 150 degrees?
Okay, step 1. Where is 150 degrees? Well, it's bigger than 90, but it's smaller than 180, so that puts it right in quadrant 2.
And what does our cast rule tell us about quadrant 2? The letter is S for sine, which means the sine of any angle in this quadrant has to be positive. It's really that easy.
And that's the key. We knew our answer was positive before we even touched a calculator. The sine of 150 degrees is, in fact, positive 0.5.
All right, you ready? Let's tackle the second part of our little puzzle, the cosine of 210 degrees.
First up, 210 degrees. It's past 180, but not quite to 270, so it's living in quadrant 3. Now we check our rule. The letter for quadrant 3 is T. That means tangent is the only positive one here, so our function, cosine, has to be negative.
And look at that, the rule works perfectly. We knew the sine had to be negative, and there it is in the final answer, negative 0.866.
Let's do just one more to really make sure this concept is locked in. How about the tangent of 330 degrees?
Okay, 330 degrees. We're almost all the way around the circle, putting us in quadrant 4. And what's the rule for quadrant 4? C, for cosine. That means only cosine gets to be positive. So our function, tangent, is definitely going to be negative.
And there you have it. The final answer is negative 0.577. See? 3 totally different problems, 3 different quadrants, and all of them were figured out using one simple, powerful rule.
So this is more than just a trick for a few homework problems. Why is this rule such a genuine game changer for anyone doing trigonometry?
Well, here's the real magic. You don't need to memorize that giant chart of positive and negative values anymore. You really only need to know the values for the first quadrant. That's it. Cast handles the signs for every other angle in the universe.
It means less rote memorization and way more actual understanding.
And if you're worried you might forget the order, here's a little pro tip for you. Start in the bottom right quadrant, quadrant IV, and spell out the word cast as you go counterclockwise. You'll put C in the fourth, A in the first, S in the second, and T in the third. It spells cast perfectly every single time.
So we just took a really confusing topic and made it simple with one little shortcut. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Now that you've got this tool in your back pocket, what other parts of math are just waiting to be unlocked, simpler than they first seem?